Good evening, this is News.PH, but it's not politics as usual. I'm Pia Hontiveros. It is January 7, just 8 days to go before Pope Francis arrives in Manila. As the Vicar of Christ comes for a visit, what is it like to prepare? There are things we might have overlooked, the nitty-gritty of details in the background. Our guests, Health Undersecretary Teddy Herbosa and Crowd Management Consultant Martin Aguda. We spoke to Ambassador Marciano Paynor, who heads the organizing committee separately. Let's start off the show with that interview. Ambassador Paynor, thank you very much for joining us. Can you tell us what the similarities and the differences are between the papal visits of 1995 and 2015? 20 years apart.
All right. There are several distinct differences, and but the one distinct difference is that the previous Pope John Paul II was deferred to the host countries' arrangements for the most part. That visit was also called a pastoral visit. So the government's participation and or part of their program was minimal. In this particular visit, Pope Paul's visit here is considered a state visit.
Pope Francis.
Pope Francis. Yeah. The Vatican has agreed for the government to give arrival honors, which we did not do for Pope John Paul. Yeah. So that's those are the basic differences.
But Pope Francis, well, declined a state dinner, for example.
Yes, many of the aspects that we normally offer to a state guests, like a state dinner and let's say a full bilateral meeting, have been requested by the Vatican to be waived. But it does not diminish the fact that it is still considered a state visit. So Pope Francis will still have a bilateral meeting with the President. They will have arrival honors, and he will be hosted for many of the, like all of his movements in the country will be care of the government.
Okay, but he is staying in the papal nunciature. He is riding in a vehicle that will be provided by the government. In other words, apart from declining the state dinner, he hasn't declined anything else.
Yes, that is correct. Also, usually we provide state guests with hospitality, like offering him a hotel or somewhere appropriate. In this particular case, just like when Pope John Paul came, he stayed at the nunciature, and my understanding is that the Pope, wherever they visit, they either stay at the nunciature or at the convent or at or a church property.
Yeah, and I can't. No one can imagine Pope Francis staying in a hotel.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what about personality-wise? I mean, so we had JP2, very beloved, very popular Pope. No, everybody's going crazy about him. But you have Pope Francis, who likes to go near people. Talagang lalapit siya talaga sa tao.
Yes.
How is that a concern for government?
It raises some serious concerns. The difference between the two popes is that the previous pope has had an actual experience involving a security breach, and what Pope Francis, in the meantime, is one who, even while he was a bishop, while he was a cardinal, was one who really reached out to the people. He was known to be traveling in public buses even while he was a cardinal. And so this is something that distinctly characterizes his, the way that he wants himself to be known as Pope.
Are you prepared for any eventuality in the sense na, alam mo naman si Pope Francis, he likes to all of a sudden break ranks, yung biglang lalakad dito, makikipagkamaya, yung mga ganon.
Yes, we have. And in fact, we've studied his previous visits to Brazil, to Korea, and we've looked at how he wanted to be reaching out to the people. And so that in itself raises a few concerns. But we, the government, our security people have in fact been preparing for that as well, because there's no way of stopping him from reaching out to the people. So we will try to accommodate him as far as that's concerned. But then again, it raises some issues with us.
What kind of a Pope mobile will he be riding?
He will be riding a Pope mobile that is essentially the same as the ones that he used in previous visits. So it's being, and I guess that's what he'll be using here. Yes.
When it comes to security, sir, Ambassador Paynor, will you be jamming cell phone signals? Will people not have access to their cell phones, at least in the areas where the Pope will be? For example, Luneta, Mall of Asia, Tacloban, mga ganun.
That particular aspect, I think, is still being studied. It's still under consideration. But for the most part, I think people will be allowed to use their cell phones, especially taking selfies and stuff like that. As far as communicating is concerned, I think one of the major issues is more an overload in the system of our telcos, both Smart and Globe and Sun, because of course, you know how our people are. They want blow-by-blow explanations to whoever they're talking to, that they're right there.
Okay. So how is that going to be dealt with?
The NTC, National Telecommunications Commission, plus PLDT and Globe, I think, are looking at how they can ensure that everybody will be able to communicate in spite of the volume of calls that are ongoing. But as of right now, these are still being finalized. And I think that for the most part, people will have that facility to communicate.
Okay. So you mentioned that you studied the visits in Brazil and Korea. What is it about the visit in Korea that helped you prepare for this coming visit?
Well, we saw how the Korean church, Catholic Church, and the government worked closely together, and so we followed some of the things that they did, and which is that everyone who was participating in the events close enough had to be at least identified. Not primarily just for control purposes, but to limit the crowds. We all know, like for instance, if there are 100 million Filipinos and 80 million are Catholics, half of them, if they had the chance, would like to have a picture with the Pope or at least touch him. And so in order that this can be managed, then we ought to know exactly how big an area is, how many people can comfortably be or safely be in a particular area, so that security concerns, not only of the Pope but also the public, are addressed.
Okay. When we talk about security concerns for the Pope, no? So I'm sure there is an elaborate setup already in place. But can you give us a little bit more information about that? How panatag na ba ang loob natin that the Pope will be safe and that the public will be safe?
Well, yung panatag, that is something that we can say after the visit. Now, before and during the visit, all our antennas are up. We have and we have to consider all possible scenarios, and all of that is now being addressed, and scenario after scenario is being thought of, and how we can appropriately address these scenarios. And a lot of that has to deal with the crowd, our own security for the crowd. Because you know how it is with our Filipino Catholics who want to see or touch His Holiness, and sometimes they forget that the collective action of a huge crowd can be destabilizing in many ways. And that was one of the things that we did not consider in 1995. Cardinal Tucci, head of the papal advance then, had informed us that and recommended that we put physical barriers, and he said, no, we will be able to manage the people with policemen. But we were not able to, unfortunately. It's really because of the fervor,
yes,
and the way that our citizens want to touch the Pope.
Crowd behavior.
Crowd, and so the whole crowd surged forward, and that was one of the reasons we were not able to bring the Pope to the Luneta by land. We had to chopper him in.
Okay, but this time around, you will be bringing him by land.
We will be bringing him by land, and we've asked the CBCP and the Church Committee to impress upon all of our parishioners, all of our faithful, to bear in mind that their security as well as the Pope's must be a collective responsibility, not only of the government, but of everyone, of every Filipino citizen. And so we are hoping that by continuously reminding our people that each one who is there also has the responsibility to protect and ensure the physical safety of the Pope, they themselves must be part of that collective security.
As you mentioned, the 1995 visit, there were no barriers. This time around, there will be cement barriers.
Yes, that was the first thing that we have considered, and the government has agreed to put physical barriers only because we
protect everyone, no?
Yes, this is to protect everyone. Half of the street will be for the people, the other half for the motorcade of the Pope.
Okay.
Yes.
How high are the barriers?
Oh, 4 feet.
4 feet.
Just 4 feet.
So
with a little bit more for just to ensure that but it's not to cover visual.
But of course,
sight.
what we don't want, ayaw nating mangyari, people going over the barriers. So if any law enforcement officer sees someone going over the barrier, they will be.
Yes, they will request the person to go back.
They will be requested to go back.
Yes.
I mean, dapat yun ang
yes,
rule.
That's
a rule. If any intelligence information that is quite reliable, that will tell us that there may be any form of security threat.
Not that I am personally aware of, but our security forces and intelligence forces are actually coordinating with international intelligence agencies as well, because again, the Pope's visit here is being monitored also by the other countries, and so we share information.
So there is information that has been coming in?
I would assume so, yes, but I'm not personally aware of. Thank you.
Okay, but nothing that should worry us or concern?
Well, nothing specific that would worry us, but that when you prepare for something like this, you assume worst case.
Okay. Yung worst case scenario building, you've had meetings that where you discuss all sorts of things. Have you got everything down pat that just in case this happens, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to respond, how we're going to react?
Yes, almost all the various different scenarios that are possible have been taken into consideration, and I think our security forces are prepared for these eventualities. But then again, I must hasten to add that really there's nothing that you can prepare for 100% in cases like this. But I must say that in total, the government's efforts have been, if there's such a thing as more than 100%,
Okay.
in such preparations. Yes, we have, and we continue to do so, even way past the arrival of the Pope here. We can only rest after he shall have left on the 19th.
Okay, so let's bring this to a very personal level. So you were involved in the past visits, and then now again you are involved here. What does it feel like for you?
I feel blessed in a way. I never thought I'd be. I'd have the fortune of being involved in the preparations of the Pope's visit. I'm here to help and lend my experience in the past and share whatever lessons learned we have from that past visit. And I'm fortunate enough that we have collaborators, and the Executive Secretary especially, who chairs the National Organizing Committee, who's been hands-on in this matter especially.
Okay, and of course you as head of the, and I guess with your position, you will meet Pope Francis.
Well, I'll be there. And,
you'll be there.
Yes, I'll be there, and I'll be fortunate enough to be near enough to see him close.
Yes. Have you thought about what you will say to him, if you do get to say anything to him? If you do get to greet him, or we presume you will greet him?
I used to believe I could, at least say something, but in all of the meetings, in all of my meetings with the previous popes, I always get overwhelmed, and all I can say is Your Holiness, and that's it. And so he gives a blessing, and I feel fulfilled.
Ambassador Paynor, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, Pia, for inviting me to your program.
Salamat po, sir.
Thank you.
When we come back, we'll speak to Undersecretary Teddy Herbosa and Crowd Management Consultant Martin Aguda. News.PH. We'll be right back. Welcome back to News.PH. Our guests, Undersecretary Teddy Herbosa and Crowd Management Consultant Martin Aguda. We're going to speak to them about two important things that must never be overlooked when the Pope comes to visit: mass gathering medicine and crowd management. Undersecretary Teddy, hello, good evening. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, Pia. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. And welcome back. Welcome back. And Martin also, welcome.
Good evening,
back.
Pia.
Yeah, okay. We're going. We did this a few weeks back. Now we were talking about what we need to prepare for the papal visit or any other mass gathering event. But let's begin with you, Yusek, Teddy. Can you define first what is mass gathering medicine?
Well, it's a new field in medicine that came about out of pre-hospital care.
Pre-hospital care.
That means before you get to the hospital. And it's really under the realm of emergency medicine. And I became involved in it because I'm a trauma surgeon, and I tried to cover a lot of events in the past, even the past papal visit. And we've learned a lot in terms of how the world manages mass gathering events and what illnesses and injuries come out. So today they call them mass gathering medicine. And there's a lot of research coming out, what's the science and guidelines, strategic planning and strategic thinking towards making sure that everyone in a mass gathering event, whether it be a rock concert, a political rally, or a religious event, will all be a healthy, safe, and memorable event.
Let's go into all that details a little later on. Tell us everything about mass gathering medicine. Martin, yung crowd management
There's a difference between crowd management and crowd control. In the Philippines, people call it, even our authorities call it crowd control. But crowd management versus crowd control, crowd management is a proactive approach that involves all aspects of planning, not only security, safety, parking, health issues, those things. And the bottom line is everything is for the safety and protection of the spectators and the crowd.
Yeah.
Crowd control, on the other hand, is a reactive mode.
Okay.
An example is a police action. When the crowd goes rowdy, you need police action. So you have your CDMs, civil disturbance management groups. You train your hoses to the crowd to disperse them. So crowd management, crowd control is just part of the overall crowd management.
Crowd management. Okay, that's when things go wrong.
Yes.
Kumbaga. Of course, everybody, well, Filipinos have this very negative perception of crowd control, like you said, no, police action, breaking up the crowd, etc. But crowd management, like you said, it's a much bigger umbrella that encompasses so many other things. No? So
Yes.
it's both crowd management and mass gathering medicine. These are all under
Complementary.
the complementary, and they are very preventive. Parang preventive, no? You look forward, you plan. Okay. Sige. So let's begin with you, Yusek Ted. Tell us more about mass gathering.
We've had a lot of experiences. This coming January 9, we'll be having the Nazareno feast and that procession. That's a crowd. That's crowds close to 1 million that moves around the streets of Quiapo in Metro Manila. And every year, when I was in Philippine General Hospital, head of emergency, we would prepare for that months before. By November, we'd prepare for that to make sure that all the different areas are covered with ambulances, paramedics, first aiders, even the way the crowd moves and the design of all that. We've had deaths in the past. We've had injuries, a lot of injuries, and most of them are walking barefooted. So this is a nice example because this is also a religious event.
Yeah.
So
and it's a little bit more chaotic, ano?
Yes,
than the
mainly
papal visit.
because of the character of the people who are devotees to the Black Nazarene. The devotees are mostly people who are repentant of their
So
sins.
when you're repentant, yeah.
I don't think I'll get the same crowd for the papal visit. For the papal visit, and our last experience was during the World Youth Day in 94.
95?
95 was, we had a lot of experiences, but the problem there was the density, the crowd density.
Meaning?
Meaning more people in one place.
Okay.
That means if you get injured or if you collapse or if you get asthma, the doctors who are there cannot even go to you or cannot get you out.
And
there's a
extricate
delay.
you, no?
When there is a delay, the quality of healthcare goes down. You may even die from that. If you have an asthmatic attack, you forgot your puff.
Inhaler.
And then the inhalers are there in the medical stations. But to get to that crowd, it will take you 30 minutes to just traverse the crowd. That creates a risk of death to the person who's asthmatic. So these are the things you need to look at and foresee because these are the things we need to prepare. So we learned from that. We said this year we're planning to put field hospitals within the crowd so that they can actually go to that particular area.
But is that going to be, for lack of a better word, really helpful given that the size, the expected size of the crowd, and then, I mean, you can have, 2 field hospitals in Rizal Park, for example, but if there is someone who is 100 meters away from that field hospital and needs emergency care, how will you, paano nyo kukunin yung tao?
That's very important to have coordination with the marshals and then the people that move around. In the last papal visit, we had people that were walking. We had emergency medical technicians or first aiders with first aid kits that walk around. Okay. And then in this event, because it's religious, everyone is very helpful. So they kind of assist people who need medical assistance. So we're hoping that this same character will be the character there. Unlike in a political rally, an opposition rally, with the angry people or rioting people, the tipping point to rioting and throwing stuff and stones is closer than the people who will be helping and volunteering.
So for example, if someone has a heart attack or an asthma attack in the middle of that dense crowd in Rizal Park or even in UST, what can people do if the EMT is not very near them at that point? So,
well, the same thing we do when we hear an ambulance or a fire truck moving the street. We should give way and we should let people. So even if that crowd is a high density, if you're the ordinary bypasser, wag na kayong mag-onlooker or mag-isyoso, usisero. You move away so that this person can be evacuated. It's the speed that they get to the doctor that will change the outcome.
Okay.
What
if there is no space for them to move away? Pwedeng, I was minsan may ganun.
Overhead.
Overhead, ano,
Overhead was
Martin?
what
I call it
happened.
pasaload.
Pasaload.
That
Pasaload.
happened. Actually, that happened.
Oo.
The beauty of that high density during the past papal visit was that some of the kids, because they were there the whole day and the whole night with the vigil, some of them collapsed out of hypoglycemia, but they wouldn't fall down because they'd fall down on the side of the person beside them or
okay.
in front.
Oo.
And then they'd carry them up and then put them to the side up with the hands of the young people. So, but
Yeah.
you know, there are difficulties with that. The safety. What if mabigat yung hinimatay? Ako, 220 pounds. Pag may bubuhat ba sa akin? Can they carry me? That's the other thing. So those are issues that we need to worry about.
Pero that's one way to extricate a person.
In the events that I handle, I use the mnemonic LAST, or locate, access, stabilize, and transport.
Okay.
The challenge is locating and accessing.
Accessing yung getting to the person.
Getting to the
means that-
person.
Okay.
So, as I've mentioned, you use overhead. You have to pass the patient
Yeah.
until it reaches the EMT. And one more thing, you have
But
to
how will the crowd know where, in what direction? Or basta
Signs.
to the fringes? To what?
No, you
Paano?
have to have signs.
Signs.
If you have a medical tent, you
Okay.
must show that the sign
Signs,
is a
okay.
first aid station.
Okay, basta...
and the marshals should be aware also.
the marshals.
The marshals.
And the marshals will call the medics. And most likely, there will be a lot of medical strike teams, meaning medics on foot rather than stations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there will be a lot of stations, but you have a lot of people, roving medics.
Correct.
Okay, on foot.
Okay,
So
so last, locate.
locate, access, stabilize. You bring them to the first aid and medical stations.
Or treat
And
them there, right there.
Treat them
Let's
there.
say it's just a wound, the roving medics can treat their put band-aid and stuff like
And
that.
since you have field hospitals, the doctors can do medical interventions on site.
Also,
Okay.
so
O, sige.
stabilize. So, because bringing them to the airport, to the hospital might be a problem because of the traffic.
Yeah.
Because remember, the ingress of people will be all towards that big mass gathering event.
Yeah.
So your egress is the problem. So if you have someone who's sick and needs to get to the hospital, you might have a problem. So you triage really the people that can be treated there.
Yeah.
So that you
Triage
don't
is...
prioritizing to
Yeah.
prioritize who needs to go to the hospital immediately and those that can be treated at the first aid station or at the field hospital.
And that's done via assessment by the medical
By the doctors, yeah,
specialist, by the doctor, no? Meaning they can what? They take your blood pressure?
Yeah, they take your vital signs. They make an assessment of whether you get worse. So it's emergent, urgent, or non-urgent. So emergent, that means you'll die in minutes. That means they have to do something. Or urgent, will die in hours. Within hours, you need to be brought to the hospital. Yung non-urgent, they can treat them there and then send them home. Then
Both
just
of
for
you
the record.
mentioned marshals, no? We are presuming that all these groups that are going to be attending mass at the Luneta, at UST, they all have their own marshals, and these marshals are fully aware of all the SOPs, all the procedures, or kumbaga nakapag-coordinate na
They
itong
should.
mga grupo with the marshal. What do you mean by they should?
Well, there's a difference between just looking out for performing security functions. Okay, as a crowd management operator or an event marshal or crowd marshal, you should monitor the crowd closely. You have to watch for crowd behavior changes.
Okay.
Because in crowd science, we have this crowd psychology and crowd dynamics. What will make a crowd move? So in crowd behavior, you have to think of people might get frustrated if they can't access one area of the event venue. So dyan na yung over the backod. They will tend to do undesirable behavior.
Yeah. Meaning, in this case, no, when Pope Francis comes to visit, yung mga tao gustong lumapit sa kanya.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
So, magkakaroon ng...
Although you have barricades and then they're using a barricade, not the
Barriers.
steel railings, but the concrete barriers.
Concrete
That is, I
barriers.
think, 1.2 meters high. It will be easy for them, actually, to go over those barricades. So, apart from those barricades, you should have marshals. And those marshals should detect little problems and make sure that they will be addressed at once.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and when you say little problems and crowd behavior changes, what exactly do you mean? What do we need to look out for? And this is not just for the marshals, it should be for everyone who plans to go, no?
Yes. one is, there's this phenomenon in crowd science, in crowd psychology, called the individualization. Meaning, when you are part of the crowd, you adapt the entire crowd behavior. When somebody tells us to run or go over the barricades, even if you don't intend to be part of that crowd, the tendency is you will join the crowd. If you can't beat them, join them.
Nadadala ka na lang. Or
Yeah.
nagpapadala ka na lang. Ganun.
Or if everybody's doing it, diba? You might as well do it also. So
Okay.
that's the crowd or herd mentality. So the event marshal, the crowd marshal, should monitor little problems and should address them at once.
How will the event marshal, the marshals know that there is a problem like that?
An example would be
may isang maingay,
one person, yes, may isang maingay, one person mag-over the backward. That marshal should detect that and prevent that person from doing the
We
over
had
the
an
backward.
incident like that already. Remember the game show? There was a game show of another station wherein people were told that they'll be given prizes and money at Ultra. And then people camped until the night before. And then when someone announced there, only those with tickets will be the ones that will be allowed to enter. There was a stampede. And there were about 75 to 100 people that died, elderly people. So that single event of saying only those with tickets will be allowed to enter caused a stampede. Imagine the behavior change.
That's another factor. There's a miscommunication in a big crowd. There's a front and back miscommunication. Those people at the back do not know what's happening in front. Okay, so when you talk of crowd pressure, people tend to push forward or further, not knowing that people are already trapped against the front barricades.
In fact, Martin, as everybody discovered that I'm involved with the planning, every one of my friends are asking for a ringside seat to be near the Pope. So I guess they're the only ones. I said there are 5 or 6 million. How can you get all ringside seats? So I guess that's the mentality of every pilgrim, Catholic pilgrim.
Everybody's hoping to get
a clear and clear view or nearby view of the Pope.
Okay.
And that's going to be a problem, right, Martin?
Yeah, we'll continue this discussion. News.PH will be right back. Please stay with us. Welcome back to News.PH. I'm Pia Hontiveros. Still with us, Health Undersecretary Teddy Herbosa and Martin Aguda, Crowd Management Consultant. Martin, you were saying?
Talking about miscommunication, the front and back miscommunication. In crowd management, you need a means of communicating with the crowd. Okay, rumor control is very important.
Okay.
So how do you communicate an emergency instruction to the crowd, telling this sector to evacuate? What will be the means of informing them? So will the marshal have these megaphones, or will it be announced over the stage that we need to evacuate this area immediately? Things like that. Crowd needs to be managed and not controlled. Now, first reason is large crowds will tell us that something odd will happen. So that's something to do with communications with the organizers, the marshals, and how they attend to emergency situations, things like that. So these should be considered in the planning process in crowd management.
Yeah. We've heard so many times that the crowd estimate 5 to 6 million in Luneta. Wasn't the biggest crowd there
5
million.
5
4 to
M?
5 million.
When was that again?
In 95.
In 95. But we're expecting a bigger crowd than that this time around.
There will be a difference between the 1995 crowd and the crowd now, in terms of population, Metro Manila. And another, being a technology-savvy population, pips in Metro Manila, everybody wants to take pictures of the Pope. No? So analyzing it on a crowd management perspective, people would want to be in front of the barricades or get near the Pope.
But that is impossible, diba? Science will tell us no two objects can occupy the same space at the same time.
The tendency is to push forward. Instead of you just standing here and seeing the Pope from a distance.
Yeah.
And with your camera, and you want to go near the Pope to take pictures.
Yeah.
So, crowd dynamics naman ang tawag doon.
Pero di ba, we have that problem. Sabi mo nga, individualization, and then yung parang minsan may mga taong hindi na naiisip kung what their actions will what effect their actions will have on other people.
That's right.
Diba? So
That's right.
like you said, they'll push forward or whatever.
You call it crowd tension or crowd frustration, and these are phenomenon that happens in a crowd when people get frustrated and and they will just do undesirable behaviors.
If you watch the videos of, let's say, Hajj, the Hajj in Saudi Arabia, they actually control it with a NASA-type control room so that they can, all the movements, so they study it. So it's really the science. Nazareno, for example, Black Nazarene, we've gotten better and better every year because we start to know how the crowd moves, their planning. We get mad when they change the route because the planning will all change and everything. The situation is different now. There's the social media factor.
Yep.
And I think that's going to be a big, people can tweet something and it can create panic.
Yeah.
Agree.
People
Okay.
can,
So that's one thing we should not be doing. You know, people watching us right now,
Yes.
what we should be telling them is, please don't tweet anything or don't retweet or spread
they think it's a
Especially
joke.
if it's
unverified,
unconfirmed.
unconfirmed
Yeah,
information. Wait, speaking of social media, are they going to be jamming cell phone signals? I mean, will people be able to use their cell phones in Luneta, for example, in UST?
They have done that
Nazareno, hindi
in
ba?
the past few
Nazareno.
years in
Nazareno.
Nazareno.
It's done.
Yeah, and when they do that, I'm seeing some crowd issues now because people will be looking
to
for each
announce
other.
Yes.
That if they don't announce it, diba, and magkita tayo in
Lost.
one place, the tendency of people is to look for each other. There would be a lot of crowd dynamics going on. Imagine
Yeah.
5 million people, 6 million people
Looking
moving
for-
around looking
yeah.
for each other. That would be a problem.
Oo. So, was there a recommendation already not to do such a thing?
I
or
really
what?
don't know. It's up to the
That was
authorities.
discussed. That was discussed.
Yeah, so,
That was
paano?
discussed in the
So what's going
meetings.
to happen?
There'll be some access. I'm sure there'll be some
There
access.
will be some access, meaning...
The people that have required to access
Okay, so
cell
an
phones
ordinary
and-
pilgrim, someone who wants to see the Pope, goes there with family or friends, tas nagkahiwalay sila.
That's really
You can
a
forget
security
about
question.
watching, oo.
I think you should assume that when you go there, the signals may be blocked. That's what I can tell. the
I have a tip for,
Yeah.
for those going. Pre-arrange their meetup locations.
Yes, that's the way
Okay.
to do
Like
that. What
where to
time?
meet and after the event,
Yeah.
another meetup location. So we have 2 meetup locations.
In an emergency?
Yeah.
A meetup
in an
in an
emergency,
emergency?
in the venue.
Yep.
In the venue or nearby,
Okay.
and another one after.
After the
that's
event.
really the other problem. Getting there and getting out, the ingress and egress of the crowd, because we know it's a confined event in Luneta, a mass, I think, right? So something prior to the mass and something after. Afterwards, people will egress, and that's going to create a lot of problems as well. And that's where it's really important. You lose your relatives, you lose your children, etc., elderly.
Okay.
So that's very important to have that kind of backup plans. So each family must have their own emergency plan. A plan to decide where, if their cell phone cannot communicate, their battery goes down, their signals are blocked, how do they meet up?
Yeah.
Where do they meet up? In a
Oo.
local coffee shop or a hotel?
Or like you said, prepare for the worst case scenario and just prepare that we have no cell phone communication.
Correct.
That's right.
And then meet up na lang.
That's right.
Correct.
Okay, or send smoke signals. Or snail mail. It'll get there in time. Okay. There are things that you should not do before you go to a crowd, to an event, di ba, Martin? Like, ano to? Excessive alcohol consumption.
Yes. That's proven. That's proven in mass gathering
Yeah.
events. In fact, that's one of the factors for injury. The higher incidence of injury are in events where alcohol and drugs are available. And one
During
of
rock
these
concerts.
rock concerts,
Yeah.
we've seen this happen because the influence of alcohol and drugs really
Yeah.
take an effect on what happens to the crowd.
Well, is it correct to presume that people will not be consuming alcohol
I
for
suppose
this?
so. I suppose so.
I mean, I'm
guess
sure people are
the Pope
feeling-
will take alcohol, when doing the.
The
But
mompo.
that's only a small amount, so
Yeah.
I suppose that's not going to be a problem in this event.
Okay. But what else should people not do before going to Luneta or UST or MOA? Or
Well, Martin and I were talking about health and sanitation. 5-6 million people, there will be a deficiency of toilets. So if you drink coffee or tea or lots of water prior to going there, you'll have a problem, especially if you have a small bladder. Then you'll have to find out where, and then it may take you several minutes to even find one.
yeah.
And then we were talking about if there are portalets that will be placed there, after a few minutes, all of those will be full.
Yes. Oo.
And they'll just have to shut
So,
it down
yeah,
because
so
the
paano
trucks
yun? Because,
cannot get
I
enter.
mean, in an event like that, it's going to be a bit well, a bit hot, no? So people will be thirsty.
Correct,
so
correct.
syempre, inom ng
Correct.
tubig yan, di ba? Hydrate.
That,
So,
yeah.
paano yun?
So
So, just drink a little water at a time?
I suppose if you have a bladder problem, you stay nearby the toilets in Luneta.
Yeah.
So you know
Or,
exactly where you're going.
or just drink a little water. Okay ba yun? I mean, you know, health-wise also, you don't need to drink like 1 bottle of water every hour, right?
Correct, correct. Well, you can drink immediately after the event. Luckily, this is a short event,
Yeah.
a mass. 2 hours, 4 hours max. So at least you're not gonna die for not drinking water for 4 hours. So that's not a
Okay.
problem.
You have to pre-plan.
Yeah.
You have to pre-plan everything, like transportation options. Will you bring a car? Saan ka
Wag
pa-
na, sus Marios.
Yun nga eh.
Saan ka
Where will
magpa-park?
Saan ka
Where are you
saan
gonna
ka
park?
magpa-park,
Diba?
diba? So you have
Hindi na RT
you have to plan.
Oh my God.
You have to plan ahead. You have to consider those
Yeah.
things. No?
Okay,
Yung
transportation.
parking, transportation,
Yeah.
and expect that security will be strict. So avoid bringing mga pocket knives.
What for, diba? What are you going to do with the
anything
pocket
that will
knife?
be a subject for scrutiny of security people. Diba? And
Correct.
I suggest that they bring identification cards just in case the authorities would want to verify your identity, because
Yeah.
I would assume that the security will be very strict.
Very strict.
Yes. Oh,
Uh,
and for
for the
any
pa-
for any
for the people
emergency,
visit.
for medical, for whatever emergency, at least you have your person to contact,
correct.
yung mga ganun.
Especially the
lahat
children
ng-
or the elderly.
Oo.
They have
Children,
their
tags.
wait,
ID
children,
tags.
children, we shouldn't be bringing kids anymore, no?
I
Wag
think
na lang.
so. I think so because of the massive crowds and the long walks. I expect that there will be long walks to be able to get to the pilgrimage
To the
site.
area.
To the
Yeah,
area.
I don't think cars can get beyond Ross
Yes,
Boulevard.
Yep.
ano?
I think
Talagang
the
maglalakad
security
ka eh.
will
Road
block.
closures, traffic,
So,
gridlocks.
is there an age limit for like kunyari, mga 12 and below, wag niyo nang isama, or
In the
kung may
previous
sakit,
events
ganun.
that I
Oo.
handle, and I usually recommend that those 8 years old down should not be brought to mass gatherings. The reason of which, yung 8 years old, these are children, school age na yan eh. So usually nahiwalay na sa parents yan. No? They follow their teachers, no. But for those younger, di ba, attached sa parents, pagka nawala yan, mahirap.
Okay.
I'd give another reason why we shouldn't bring children.
Yeah.
Mass gathering events are also the medium for infectious disease to spread. So if you bring a small child, you're exposing that child to a lot of bugs and germs. So if your immunization is not complete, you just get one person from the slums who's not been immunized from measles or mumps, you might be getting this stuff. So
Yeah.
it's also one of the things we look at in mass gathering medicine, that in these cases, illness really spreads very fast because of the density of the crowd. Someone coughs beside you, someone has TB beside you, non-medical drug-resistant TB, multi-drug resistant TB, you get cough
So
beside you.
keep the children at home. Anyway,
Yes.
the Pope will be blessing everybody, and you'll get your blessing via satellite.
Correct.
Okay, we'll continue this discussion. Please stay tuned. News.PH will be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to News.PH. I'm Pia Hontiveros, still with us, Undersecretary Ted Herbosa and Crowd Management Consultant Martin Aguda. Let's talk very briefly lang about the issue of jamming cell phone signals. Won't the benefits far outweigh the risks?
Well, it's always a balance. Safety and security are two contrasting things. For safety, you want contact with your family, right? But for security, you don't want the bad people to have access to remote control bombs or etc. So you have to weigh that,
Okay.
and that's a decision that the organizers will have to take on whether to jam the signals or not. So that depends on intelligence information, threats, threat surveillance,
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So if there's no threat, there's no need to jam. But
Yeah.
if there's a threat, their intelligence says they will probably
Okay,
jam.
so if there is that need to decide in favor of security, then like Martin and you, Teddy, were saying, then just prepare for no cell phone signal
Correct.
scenario. No?
Correct.
Martin, talk about crowd dynamics.
Well, crowd dynamics, these are the things that will make a crowd move. Actually, we'll be talking of two things. Panic and craze. Craze is anything, is a rush towards an objective or attraction. Like getting near the Pope Mobile is a craze scenario, okay, towards an attraction. Contrary to that, or opposite craze is the term panic. Panic is moving away from the point of danger, but both will cause crowd dynamics or movement. And unmanageable movement will cause stampedes or what you call crowd crush. Okay, so how do you deal with craze, for example? So proper barricading, proper marshalling is important. Number two, with panic, how do you deal with panic? Maybe having the necessary emergency preparedness management. Like, what do you do if there's a rumored bomb threat? Who will announce or effect an evacuation? Who will open additional barricades for an emergency egress? Those things should be considered during panic scenario. And the third component, adding to panic and crazy scenario, is what you call the fanatical hysteria, wherein people want to get near a celebrity, or for that matter, the Pope, because you want to have a close encounter with the celebrity and take pictures.
Yeah, okay. Elements that shape crowd behavior?
Well,
Time, for example,
this is
and space.
the time, the space, the information that I've mentioned. We're talking about the space. In a 1 square meter space, actually is 4 persons per square meter. Okay. When you reach
4 persons per square meter na you are shoulder to shoulder?
yes, okay. Yun lang threshold mo.
Okay.
When you reach 7 persons per square meter, okay, that will be a perfect recipe for a crowd disaster.
Okay, yung 5 to 6 million crowd estimate at Luneta, what is that? 4 persons to a square meter?
It
or
will
6?
depend how they barricade the area, because you can limit the number of people in a certain area. So, what's dangerous if a particular area would reach the critical crowd density, crowd crush.
The density is always higher nearer the Pope because that's the attraction.
Yep.
So, but the density kinds to be less as you go farther away. So, you balance your security of your group and your family based on how near you want to be. If you go very near an area he's describing where the density is high, more than 5 persons per square meter, you're up for a stampede, and you've got to know what to do when the crowd starts to move this way or that way. But if you're farther out, your egress will be probably the first out as well. If there's an explosion or if there's crowd, panic.
Never block the exit.
Yes,
The
never
egress point.
block
Never,
the exit.
never, ever
And know
block
your
it,
exit
yeah.
points.
Know
That's
your
another
exit
thing.
points, yeah.
Know your meeting points. Know your exit strategy.
Yeah.
Where you will go in case there's a... So that requires presence of mind of every pilgrim that will go to this.
Make a mental note of where you are, your location, and means of egress and avenues, exits, weakest routes, those things.
Okay, in this last stretch, let's move into the tips that people need to remember. But Martin, you do have a demo for us, right?
Yeah, how to survive crowds.
Okay.
Okay, when there's a dangerous crowd movement, you have to go with the flow. Actually, pag tumigil ka, you'll be trampled eh. But how do you protect yourself? Because in stampedes, in crowd crash, people die not just of trampling and injuries. You die because of compressive asphyxia. Compressive asphyxia because you are pushed against each other. Okay, to the point that you cannot breathe because wala kang inhalation and exhalation. So one way to protect yourself against compressive asphyxia is to have this boxer posture.
Boxer posture, which is like that.
Okay. Your fist protecting your head part,
Okay.
and your forearm would be parallel your chest. So, you can expand it. So, while being trapped against in a crowd, no? Ganyan ka. Or sabi ng iba, pwede rin ganon. So, you have parang bumper, you have protection sa chest area, either this boxer posture or this one, and go with the flow. Okay? If you stumble, try to get up. No, but if you cannot get up, take the fetal position. Protect your head and curl your body. You have be.
Are you going to demonstrate the fetal position na nakaganon or lying down? Iba, di ba? Paano yun?
Depende kung kaya mo. Sideways. Na
Sideways, okay lang. Basta fetal.
Position.
Okay.
Basta don't lie flat. Otherwise, you'll be step on.
That's the
Or
beauty
by
of the
the
Nazareno. Nobody has shoes. And if you're wearing shoes, you get injured, you get kicked, and then that's where some of the deaths are.
Actually,
people are trampled upon,
you
or
tiptoe.
they lose breath.
Tiptoe?
You tiptoe.
Oo.
Magtingkayad ka.
Okay.
Okay. You do like this.
Yeah.
Okay. Tiptoe. Go with the flow and protect your body, and just go with the flow.
And when you push,
And
move.
try to move diagonally towards the edge or in a pillar. if you have the chance, if you have pockets of people moving, diba? Pagka medyo maluwag, try to maneuver on the sides.
Pag para maka-exit ka na sa
Yes.
crowd.
Yes.
As fast as you can.
Yes.
But you said at first, go with the flow and then find...
If you see pockets of people na may space ka towards, move diagonal or zigzag manner.
Okay. And while you're doing that, tiptoe and then like this, boxer posture or like this.
Yep.
Ganon. Okay.
That's a protection against compressive asphyxia.
Okay. What else? What
Can you
else?
climb up a tree?
Are there trees still?
Well, a pillar, a tree can be a good protection because when you reach that crowd density and just people will be like water flowing, dire-diretso lang yan. So parang going to an obstruction will protect you in a way. But the best way is to go to the sides and evacuate safely.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
Well, before that, you actually need to prepare the type of clothes and shoes you wear. Baka naman girl ka, high heels ka doon and everything. First thing you don't want to look good with that. You want to wear comfortable clothes, the right clothes, the right shoes. That will
Rubber
lead you
shoes?
to hiking. Rubber shoes would be
Yeah.
ideal so
Okay.
that you can move around.
Not leather shoes.
Not leather shoes because you can have blisters because there'll be long walks, I'm sure. There'll be kilometer to 2 kilometer walks to get to the site you want to be.
And
Bring your own water.
bring your own
and
water. But
food.
wait, wag magchinelas, ano?
No,
So mawawala din
huwag
yun.
magchinelas.
You have to protect your feet.
In
Tapos
fact,
na yung
even
nasareno by then,
the slip-ons that are uso now, the flat slip-ons, kasi when they stampede, naiiwan talaga
Yes,
yung
yes.
shoes. Even solid shoes are left behind kasi the guy behind you will step on it and it gets dislodged.
So
you
you
end up-
tiptoe.
After a stampede, you'll see lots of shoes around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Actually, that's what
Yeah.
we see.
Oo,
Lots
oo.
of shoes.
Okay. So then
that
bring
are-
your own water.
Bring your own water and
Yeah,
your
but you said
own
also, no,
snacks and
pwede
food.
namang 4 or 5 hours hindi ka mag-water.
Yeah,
Para
and then
hindi
your
mo kailangan
medicine.
mag-yan.
Well, if you get really thirsty or
Yeah, okay.
So-
Now, if remember last time when you were here, Ted, you were saying that if you are sick, you
yes. Well,
don't go.
Number one is if you're elderly, if you're a small child, if you have illness that requires treatment, you make sure that your doctor will clear you for such an activity. It's just like joining a marathon. We ask you to, if you're a certain age group, don't join the marathon if the doctor hasn't done ECG on you or something. So I recommend that there are a lot of people who have become more spiritual as they get older. The only problem is as you get older, you have more illnesses from diabetes, hypertension, asthma, heart disease. So I guess these people need to actually be sure that they're cleared to be able to do that. 3 to 4 kilometer walk to get to the site and another 3 to 4 kilometers back. If you're in a wheelchair or if you're it's better off to have certain areas. So you might be putting yourself at higher risk of injury
Yeah.
if you go there.
Okay.
And then bring all your medicines. If you're
Bring all
asthmatic,
your medicine,
bring a complete set of medicine because you don't know how long you'll be stuck before you get out. The event might be 2 to 4 hours, but you can get stuck there for 6 to 8 hours because of the egress of people. And we've seen this in the traffic in INC had the anniversary. We saw even people who were not going to the anniversary get stuck in traffic for hours. So I expect that kind of mayhem and chaos.
Yeah. Okay. These are some of the tips that you both listed down. But people, even if you say it, people don't usually follow it. Avoid wearing valuables, diba?
Correct.
Avoid bringing large bags. Why is that important to remember?
Well, again, as I mentioned, security will be strict. You don't want to be questioned by authorities
Why
by
are you
bringing
bringing a
large
large
bags.
bag?
Yes, of course. So those things. Maybe proactiveness is very important. Like make a mental picture, overall picture of the crowd, and if you would see that possibly the area where you are in exceeded the crowd capacity, it would be best maybe to move out and go to a safer place. So, as I've mentioned, crowd behavior can change in a minute.
Will umbrellas be allowed? Has that been, because in Tacloban, for example, we're not sure. Or better yet, not bring umbrellas? Paano?
That's another factor. We talk about weather. Kasi if it's in Tacloban, it is a rainy season in Tacloban. So they expect rain may happen during that time. Here in Manila, at least it's not a rainy season, but it can rain.
But it can also obstruct the line of sight. So if all people will be using umbrellas.
In the Vatican, you can't open an umbrella.
Yeah.
So I was there. It was raining for the beatification of a saint, and we were not allowed to open umbrellas, so we got wet. We wear hoodies and raincoats.
Okay. What else must people bring? What else must people do? What else must people not do?
My advice is for people to go in groups so that they have a leader, and then they have plans, they have meetup points. There are people that can assist them in case the people who have prepared to assist them are busy or cannot be accessed. So may self-help. Very important yung self-help. So to go in groups, a big family, all your relatives, and then organize yourself para may leader kayo, meron kayong someone that can dictate how the direction will go, and then get information. If you join your parish or your Catholic groups, it's better, because that was my advice in the planning, that the marshalling and the policing of people will be also done through the organized groups. So the organized groups know if there's a stranger getting into your group. Sino to? Bakit siya nandito? Bakit may bag na malaki to? No? So those are things that we need to inform everybody. And everybody has to do their own small role. It's not only the government or the UST, for example, that will take care. Everybody has to pitch in.
Yeah. Martin, earlier you said about the boxer pose or yung ganito, no? And then tiptoeing. And then there's another one here where you say that apart from the zigzag or the diagonal movement where you try to find an exit from the crowd flow, yung accordion move, what is that?
Well, during a crowd rush or crowd movement, no, may push yan initially, di ba? If there's a lull, try to move to the sides, so you can make your safe exit. So that's the accordion move, di ba? May tulakan, then side ka kung between pockets of people.
Okay. Anything else? Any last words that people need to remember?
Well, when we are attending large gatherings for Nazareno and papal visit, the attendee should have a high level of situational awareness, taking mental pictures of the event venue, emergency exits, safest routes, medical aid stations, security outposts, those things. Bottom line, we should be responsible for our own security and safety.
Okay.
I think it's a very important event that the Pope himself will visit the Philippines. But I think we should not lose sight of what it is. This is not a rock star that we want to have a selfie with. It's about our spirituality. Sabi nga dun sa preparation natin, it's about mercy and compassion. And it's about Jesus Christ. It's not about the Pope, and that's what the Pope wanted. And I think we should remind that to all the pilgrims that will go, that this is, he's the vicar of Christ, but it's about Jesus Christ and showing compassion and mercy to the poor, the victims of Yolanda and everybody. So I think if we keep that in mind, I think the crowd dynamics will self-correct and self-police themselves.
Thank you very much for being here tonight. Martin Aguda, Crowd Management Consultant. Thank you, Martin. And Teddy Herbosa, Health Undersecretary. Thank you very much, Yusek Teddy, for being here. And of course, thank you to Ambassador Marciano Paynor, who heads the organizing committee for that interview with him. Thank you for watching. See you again next Wednesday. Good night. Eventuality in the sense na, alam mo naman si Pope Francis, he likes to all of a sudden break ranks, yung biglang lalakad dito, pagkamaya, yung mga ganon.
Yes, we have. And in fact, we've studied his previous visits to Brazil, to Korea, and we've looked at how he wanted to be reaching out to the people. And so that in itself raises a few concerns. But the government, our security people have in fact been preparing for that as well, because there's no way of stopping him from reaching out to the people. So we will try to accommodate him as far as that's concerned. But then again, it raises some issues with us.
What kind of a Pope mobile will he be riding?
He will be riding a Pope mobile that is essentially the same as the ones that he used in previous visits. So it's being and I guess that's what he'll be using here.
The similarities and the differences are between the papal visits of 1995 and 2015, 20 years apart.
All right. There are several distinct differences, and but the one distinct difference is that the previous Pope John Paul II was deferred to the host countries' arrangements for the most part. That visit was also called a pastoral visit. So the government's participation and or part of their program was minimal. In this particular visit, Pope Paul's visit here is considered a state visit.
Pope Francis.
Pope Francis. Yeah. The Vatican has agreed for the government to give arrival honors, which we did not do for Pope John Paul.
Yeah.
So those are the basic differences.
But Pope Francis, well, declined a state dinner, for example.
Yes, many of the aspects that we normally offer to a state guests, like a state dinner and let's say a full bilateral meeting, have been requested by the Vatican to be waived. But it does not diminish the fact that it is still considered a state visit. So Pope Francis will still have a bilateral meeting with the President. They will have arrival honors, and he will be hosted for many of the, like all of his movements in the country will be care of the government.
Okay, but he is staying in the papal nunciature. He is riding in a vehicle that will be provided by the government. In other words, apart from declining the state dinner, he hasn't declined anything else.
Yes, that is correct. Also, usually we provide state guests with hospitality, like offering him a hotel or somewhere appropriate. In this particular case, just like when Pope John Paul came, he stayed at the nunciature, and my understanding is that the Pope, wherever they visit, they either stay at the nunciature.
Good evening, this is News.PH, but it's not politics as usual. I'm Pia Hontiveros. It is January 7, just 8 days to go before Pope Francis arrives in Manila. As the Vicar of Christ comes for a visit, what is it like to prepare? There are things we might have overlooked, the nitty-gritty of details in the background. Our guests, Health Undersecretary Teddy Herbosa and Crowd Management Consultant Martin Aguda. We spoke to Ambassador Marciano Paynor, who heads the organizing committee separately. Let's start off the show with that interview. Ambassador Paynor, thank you very much for joining us. Can you tell us what...
Or at a convent or at, or a church property.
Yeah, and I can't. No one can imagine Pope Francis staying in a hotel.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what about personality-wise? No? I mean, so we had JP2, very beloved, very popular Pope. No, everybody's going crazy about him. But you have Pope Francis who likes to go near people. Talagang lalapit siya talaga sa tao.
Yes.
How is that a concern for government?
It raises some serious concerns. The difference between the two popes is that the previous pope has had an actual experience involving a security breach, and what Pope Francis, in the meantime, is one who, even while he was a bishop, while he was a cardinal, was one who really reached out to the people. He was known to be traveling in public buses even while he was a cardinal. And so this is something that distinctly characterizes his, the way that he wants himself to be known as Pope.
Are you prepared for any